Pink Poodle Crafts, join the Poodle Pack. It's time to get creative and make you laugh. Make your own art today. Pink Poodle Crafts is the way.
What a good boy. Hey crafty family, it's me. And today we are going to make a really cool card. This is the card we're going to make. It's not going to be decorated the same, but it's going to be the same base. And the cool thing about this card is, are you ready for it? It's a fancy card. Look at that. I was saying in my live stream, I don't do fancy cards because they're too hard to do. Well, guess what? This is actually really easy to do. And when I realized it, I was like, damn, I could do that. So I really like that. I don't mind doing fancy cards as long as they're not hard to make. If they're like really complicated and annoying, then no, I don't want to do it. I think my very first video, I did this really cool, like, folded kind of card thing. But again, it wasn't very hard to make. So the reason I found this card was because one of my friends on Facebook posted a thing to like Home Shopping Network, and they had this kit for this card, and basically they just had it so that everything was cut out for you and scored, so all you do is put it together. And I thought, well, I don't need that kit because, you know, I can go online and find it, and I found it. And MayMay Made It, that YouTuber, that's where I found it. I'll put a link to her video down below, but I found it from that video and was able to make it. And yeah, so I'm going to show you how to make it as much as I can remember. I'm going to start off, because I'm doing Halloween themed, I'm going to start off with black paper. If you're, if you're doing a different theme, then obviously you could start off with something else. So we're going to start off with one piece, and I'm going to make the mechanism first. And the mechanism is this part, not this part over here, but the part underneath of it, under here. I don't know if you can see it, under here, which this is all connected to, which is then also connected to the card. So there's 3 sections to this. So we're going to start with the actual mechanism itself, because that's the hardest part, and it's really not that hard. You're going to have an 8.5 by 11 paper, and then you're going to, on the 8.5 by 11, so it's 8.5 this way, 11 this way. So you're going to cut off and make it 10 3/4 instead of 8.5 by 11. So you're just going to cut off a 1/4 inch so that it's 10 3/4. So I'm going to measure it to be 10 3/4. I'm going to cut that 1/4 inch off, and that's the only waste you get from this piece. Then I'm going to put this away. I'm going to get my scoreboard out. Now, if you don't have a scoreboard, you don't have to have a scoreboard, okay? You can score things by taking a ruler and lining it up, on a piece of paper. Just, you can mark the edges, to make sure that it's straight. And then you would take something, like the pointy end of a skewer or something that you can use, which now I can't get this back in place to get it out of my way. But you could take something like your bone, if you have a bone folder, you could do it this way and go a couple times, and if you put it on a stack of paper, it'll actually make it a lot easier. So that's a way to do it. You don't have to have a scoring tool like this at all. It's really not even necessary at all to have it. So, okay, so this is the short side. This is the 8.5 side here. And we're going to score it at 2 1/4. So 2 1/4. Score it at 2 1/4, 4 1/4, 2 1/4, 4 1/4, and 6 1/4. 2 4 6 1/4 on each one. And then we're going to flip it long ways on the 10 3/4 side, and we're going to score it at 3 7/8. And how you count that is, here's 3, and then just count 7 spots over, because each little spot, especially on the Martha Stewart one, I don't know about other scoreboards, but each spot is an eighth. So if you count 7/8 will actually bring you to the because 8/8 will obviously be 4, because there's only 8/8 in an inch. So obviously if you say 7/8, then that's going to be the spot right before, because if you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, that's going to be the little spot right before the 4-inch mark. So that's 7/8. And then 5 3/8, so 5, and then 1, 2, 3 spots over, which is right before the 1/2 inch. So 5 3/8. And then 6 7/8, which would be 6, and then you'd count to 7, which will bring you to right before the 7-inch mark. So just like so. Okay, and then we can move that for a moment. Now you're going to cut off all 4 corners. As you can see that it's scored, and you see these corners here, this rectangle, this rectangle, this rectangle, and this rectangle. Let's cut all of them off. But when we're cutting them off, you want to be straight, especially on the 8.5 side on each one, because over here is where it's going to line up with your card base later. So on the 8.5 side, you want to make sure you cut this one and this one nice and straight. You don't want to be like all wonky about it. You kind of just take your time and it'll be fine. So you're just going to, and also, like MayMay Made It mentions, cut off the score line. Don't cut into the score line, because you want to kind of cut it off. So you're going to go right before it, since, you know what I mean? You're going to go right before it on each one, and then on this side you're going to go right after it. Does that make sense? So what I mean is, see right here, you're going to cut it right before. I'll show you when I'm done. It'll be easier if I show you when I've completed it. See how the score line is still right there? And I actually cut it off of this piece, so there is no, just a white mark. I don't know why. Get off of there. So I'm cutting the score lines completely off of these. So I'm going right next to the score line, like that. So the score lines that I made are going to actually be on the papers you cut off on each corner. So hopefully that makes sense to you. Okay. It's all right. Okay. So all the score lines have been cut off of these. Now you're going to hold it where, see, now you've got these 2 flaps here that are big, and then these 2 flaps that are small. On the small flaps, you're going to cut an angle cut off of each side, so that these have a little bit of an angle cut, so that they don't show up as much when you put your other papers on. So you can go in about a 1/4 inch or so and just angle it up to the edge. So it just angles it a little bit. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to measure anything. Just cut a little bit off and angle it up into the corner. That's all. And you're going to do that only on the small, on each edge of the small flap. Okay, now that we have that, The next part is, I guess, the hardest part, but it's not that hard. It really isn't. Okay, so as you can see, score lines, right? We are going to bring this flap over so that it goes, so that the line, see how there's a center line down the whole thing? We want to bring this flap over so it matches up with the, come on, focus. So it matches up with the center line. However, we also want it to crease at the little cross in the middle here. So we want it to crease here at this score line. So it's a little tricky, but it's not that tricky. If you take something like a ruler or even your bone folder and you just cross it across the X of your, like this, and then as like a guide, and then if you make a little crease like so in the center, okay, you kind of make a makeshift score line with just taking the ruler and doing that. It'll kind of crease it a little bit. Then when you measure your paper over to the center and just pull it in place to measure that, with that, you get your desired crease, and then you can crease it down. And it measures here, it matches with this one, like I wanted to. It matches, and then it also crosses right in the direct center. Okay? And we're going to do the same thing on this side. We are going to put the angle this time over here, and we're going to crease it. Okay? And then we are going to crease it and fold it. It's a little tricky, but it works out. See? And then you've got an X in the center. It seems a little unnatural because when you do this initially, it doesn't want to go on there. So you kind of got to finagle it to make everything line up the way it's supposed to. And once it does, it does. So then, just like that, now all you got to do is fold this sides back so that they're folded back like that on each side. And your mechanism is complete, because what happens is when you fold these, it automatically wants to fold in, and then it looks like a little house. And that's, if you did it right, the end result will be, when it's folded up, it'll look like this little house. That's what I call it. It's like a little house. So that's the mechanism of your card. Just like on this one, that's the mechanism that does this, which I'll show you how that works momentarily. So once you get everything folded and scored down, I like to fold them in and kind of score them down. Make sure everything is scored nice and tight. Okay, now your mechanism will work. And this center score line is kind of useless. It's just basically used to give you that vantage point to know where to put your crease in, really. So now that we have this done, now we're going to make the base for this to be glued onto. It's not the actual, like, this is a little crooked even. It's not the actual card base. Why am I crooked? Let me uncrooked it. See if I can uncrooked it anyway. If not, I can cut off any excess that seems to be wonky. Maybe. I don't know if I'm going to ruin it, but I'm going to do it anyway. There There we go. You probably, I don't know if you should do that, but if it messes anything up, I'll let you know. But I'm just making it even because I'm weird. I must have folded something a little tiny bit off, but that's okay. Okay, so I'm going to make the base also out of black paper. So that you need 3" by, oh no, this is for, no, sorry. This will be the base for what goes on here. So it'll be this part. We're going to make this part now. Okay. So this part is 3" by 11 inches. So since the paper is already 11, we just have to cut it at 3 inches and we're good to go. Now, you can, move that out of the way. You can either score this or just fold it, and I'll show you what I mean. You can either score this long ways at 2 3/4, 5 1/2, and 8 1/4 to give you 4 parts. And then you're going to fold it, or, well, you could score it, or if you don't want to score it, you can fold it in half once, and then fold one side into the half mark, another side into the half mark, and then you'll have your even folds, like so. But we're going to want it to be a little bit of an accordion, so you want it to be like this, where it looks like an M, because that's what's going to, how it's going to go on the card. It's going to open like that. But yeah, so you don't have to have a scoreboard to do that, because you could just fold it in half, then open it, and the half fold, fold it, and fold it. You know what I mean? Not hard. Now we're going to do some gluing. And this part is pretty easy. Okay. I'm going to try to zoom in for this, so bear with me, my camera. I got to get to my zoomy thing. Okay. Okay. So, for this part, you're going to take your base, your thing here. You're going to line up the center of this. Let me make sure I have the right side. Yeah, it should be sticking out like this. Yeah, the center should be sticking up like this. You're going to take the center line on this, and you're going to make it line up with the center line, which is another reason why that center line is there on the base there. And basically you're going to have it line up. See how there's a line here and there's a score line here, and you're going to line everything up with that, basically. And as long as you have everything lined up there, then all you have to do is fold this back, take your glue, and add some glue. Now, it doesn't matter which way you do this, as long as you do it this way. In other words, if you, there's 2 panels here, because there's a fold in the middle of this right here. There is, I don't know if you could see it, but there is a score line. Put glue on the top or bottom, pick one, but on the other side, you're going to do the opposite. So it doesn't matter which one you pick. Like on this one, I'm going to do it on the top. I'm just going to put a little glue like that. Not even all the way out to the edges. And I put it on the top part of that little scored area. Now on this side, I'm going to put it on the bottom. As long as you put it on the opposite, it doesn't matter. So I could have put it on the top here and the bottom there. It doesn't matter. As long as you do it that way. And again, there's a score line there which shows you how to put it. And you don't have to be super precise with it. You could probably use score tape as well. I think glue will hold a little bit more. So now that is glued, and it needs some time to kind of do its thing. So while it's kind of grasping a hold on itself, I'm going to now concentrate on the inside of these little pieces that go in here. Okay, we're going to cut the little, you know, because this is like the matte part of it, and now we're going to cut the actual paper that goes in here. But before we do that, actually, I think what I'm going to do is no, that's fine. I'm going to do that. We'll do that because I'm going to use, where'd it go? I've got this paper for the outside, I think. And I'll use this paper for the inside. So I'll move that out of the way. Okay, so this is going to be in those 4 little sections. And the size of these papers are going to be, let me cut this off real quick. So you're going to need 4 pieces of paper, and each are going to be 2 3/4 by 2 1/2. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this at 2 3/4. And then I'm going to cut this at 2 1/2. There's one. There's another. There's another. Now you can use any paper you want on this part. Any color, any design, whatever you want. You can stamp your own designs and use, you know, whatever paper you want. It doesn't matter. And now we'll go back to this, and this is where we're going to mat down all of our decorative paper there. However you want to do it. And we're going to glue it down. I should maybe do the orange side on some of them. That would be a good idea. Maybe that's a good idea. Let's see. Let's see what it would look like. So what if I did that, and then that, and then that? Oh, that might be a good idea, right? That would be cute. I like that idea. Let's do that. This is like an orangey color, and that's like a green color. Let's try it. Why not? Why not? Okay, and then we'll do another green one. And there are loads of variations to this card, I believe. I've seen a few, and I think there's more that I didn't even see. So, but this is just the most simplest way to do it. the way I've seen it done. And I like simple. But I might do a few other variations that, as long as they're simple, I'll be able to do them. I don't think I'll be able to do them in this video, but I might do them in a different video if I find something that sparks my interest. Everything is pressed down. Okay, so let's see. Now that we're glued down, now, as you can see, it works. Now it's going to stick out the bottom a little bit. That's fine. Don't worry about it. Let's see. It works, but obviously it's not on its base, so it's not real sturdy right now. But it works. It's all good. So now we are going to make some decorative paper to go inside here in this little area up in here. Now you could just put it in here, just watching out, because right here there's a crease where it folds. So you'd have to go below the crease so it'll stick down like about here to have decorative paper. Or you can make it so that it goes up into there a little bit. In order to do that, you have to fold it like this. And I probably should have done this prior to putting this on, this whole thing on. It would have been easier because this sticks out a little bit, so I just have to avoid the fact that that sticks out, but it'll be fine. So I have to figure out what paper I want to use for that bit. Let's see, for the insides of that, I might want to use this because it looks like I'll have enough for that, so let's try that. So what you do is you fold it, and you basically just trace the paper around the little house, the little triangle. And I'm going to use I'm going to cheat and use the bottom line of this little bit that's on here so that this hangs off, but I'll know to cut along the bottom there. So that's going to be my cheat. I'm going to use this so it's, hopefully I can see it. Can I see it? Oh, barely. I should have used the white one. So, oh, and then to do the, you know what, maybe I will. Let me see, where's my white pencil? So that you guys can see. Let me line that back up and redo it. Like that. Even though I got it on the sides there a little bit, that's fine. So now you can see it a little bit. And now I'm going to flip it over and do the same thing. Not that you really need to. I could just cut two of the same, really, because this is the same pattern. Now, if your pattern has a directional thing, then you want to make sure you do it like this when you flip it over so that your patterns all look the same. You know what I mean? Like when you open it, because obviously you're going to open it like this, so you don't want the pattern to be upside down there and straight here. Do you know what I mean? So if you had a pattern, you would do it that way, but I don't. So I ain't gonna worry about it. Okay, so now I know to cut off at the bottom here. And then cut off, and I'm going to cut off the white line, what I drew. I'm going to cut that off. So hopefully that'll fit on the inside. It might be a little too big. I might have to adjust it. because you want to make sure that it doesn't fold onto, you know what I mean, affect the fold of the card. So I'm going to cut off a little bit there, a little bit on this side. And a little bit there. A little bit there. I need to cut it next time a little bit more. Okay. Let's see. When we glue it down. You might have to move it down a little bit. There we go. So I have to cut off a little bit here. You just got to finagle it a little bit. I just messed it up. Dang it. You just don't want to affect the fold, that's all. And actually I could probably cut it off after I glue it, but I'll cut off. Luckily I have these little grids on here. If you didn't, then you might have a little harder time. But there we go. Okay, that looks good. I'll cut a little further in on this one. That's the trick. That's the trick. I need to cut a little bit further in. That might be a little wonky. That's okay. We'll make it work. So that's for that side. That's for that side. A little bit off the bottom. And that should be fine. Yep. And yep. Okay. So yeah, it takes a little finagling. But once you get it, it'll work out. You just got to play around with it. And now we're going to glue it in. And again, making sure it does not interfere with the fold of the card. Most important part. As long as it goes up to the little score, because the score lines come like out here, like as you can see, they come right there. That's a score mark. So you want to be sure that when you put it, it'll still be able to fold without any issues. Because, see, that's where it folds over that little area. Okay, so we've got one in there. Now we need to do the other one. And I know I said it's not a hard card. It's really not. And once you get going on it, you're like, and once you do one, and you're like, oh, you get the hang of it really easily. It's not hard. I don't consider this a hard card because I didn't have to do a whole lot of crazy measurements and crazy things. I did, you know, you have to do a few steps, obviously, but it's the difficulty level is just not a big deal. It's not hard. I've seen much, much worse, more difficult cards than this. That I was just like, no, that's okay. Like ones where you had to like cut weird things out to get things to work and... Okay, so everything should close up, and it does. And it works just fine. Awesome, awesome. Before I decorate this, we're going to make the base of the card, which is also going to be black, which I think I forgot to go get the black card for. Hold on. Oh, wait, this might work. I think this will work. I think this works as the base. Yeah, 4.5 by 11. I think this will work. I think this ends up working. I forgot. Let me make sure. Because this is obviously 11 inches, right? Let me look down here. Yep. So it's just not, needs to be cut at a 4.5. So yeah, the part that you cut, was it 4.5? The part that you cut your little things out of winds up working as your base. So you have very little waste in this project too, which is nice. Because all I have really are the corners that I cut out of the first bit and then this. And that's really it out of those 2 pieces of card. And then you just fold it in half, or you can score it at 5.5. I'm just going to fold it in half because I'm notorious for cutting things wrong. So I'm better if I just fold it in half and then... Alright, and then on the inside of your card, this gets in here. Now this is why I said when you cut your corners off of your pieces that you want to cut them a little bit, make sure they're just, you know, straight and not sloppy, because now you're going to line this into here like this, and you just don't want it to be super sloppy looking. That's all. And so how you line this up is... you want to line this in the card the best you can so that when you fold it, actually, no, this is the easiest way. I forgot. Oops. Line it in with the point up here, folded. Line it in folded. That's right. And make sure that it's in there to the point. So like you push, kind of start to fold it and then push the little house. I call this the house. Push the house up into there, and then make sure it's lined up on all the sides and everything looks nice. Okay, and now all you got to do, once you got it all lined up the way you want it, and that it's straight the way you want it, okay, now you take your glue and you glue your house. You put glue on your house, holding it down so you don't move it. And then just close the cover and glue it down. And that's glued. And then the other side is very easy, because all you gotta do is flip it over, open the cover, and just do the same thing because it's already in place for you. So that makes that nice and easy. And then just reclose your card. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. Now, there's your magic card. So that's how you make the base of your card, and to start matting the inside. I think I'm going to do a part 2 only because I'm not feeling great and I don't want to have to edit, so that I stop this now. You know, like I could stop it now and upload this part and then do a whole new part, only because I haven't been feeling great, and so I have to kind of do things a little more slowly. Like normally I would stay on here for 2 hours and complete the whole thing, but I need to take a break, and since I don't want to have to edit, I'm going to stop it here and make this part 1. And then we're going to do part 2 where we actually decorate the card, which will be cool. So yeah, it's a very easy card to make. And yeah, you get this cool result and you're like, how the heck did that happen? And anybody opening it will be like, oh my God, that's so cool. So we are done with part 1. I'm going to stop it here, and part 2 will be available immediately. So I usually will upload part 1 and part 2 at the same time. So really, it's all you have to do is click on the next video, which I will hopefully remember to put a link in the description, and the end card, which should be playing soon, which will show things up on the screen, should have part 2 hopefully in it. So it should work out to go to right to part 2, hopefully. So if it doesn't, just go look for part 2 on my channel. So I hope you enjoyed this. Let's go to part 2. Before you leave, make sure you give this a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed yet, please subscribe. I really appreciate it. It helps me out if you subscribe and like my videos. That would be awesome. And make sure you check the links in the description always, because not only will there be part 2, but there's other links in there that might interest you, like my Patreon and whatnot. So check that out, and I will see you in part 2. Make sure you do what you love and love what you do, and be nice to people, and I'll talk to you later.